Welcome everybody, get ready for the latest AWS breakthroughs from the CDK Migrate, which just reached general availability, to revolutionary AI hackathons. We've got all the AWS February updates right here. Let's dive in. Okay. So here we are keeping up with AWS tidbits, keeping up with AWS. It's February 2024. Let's get it. Okay, so first thing, AWS has introduced CDK Migrate, which is a component of the Cloud Development Kit. Now, this is an open source framework that AWS has released that basically allows you to convert code into CloudFormation, okay? So you can make this in the stacks and services and resources, right? So this is very useful. Migrate has now just achieved general availability. This means that you can now migrate existing service configurations in AWS into the CDK. This is awesome. Check this out. Number two, so somewhere back in reInvent, like last year, which seems like 6 months ago. Wait, it was almost 6 months ago. Let's move on. Infrastructure as Code generator. So this is a services to code generator that allows you to create an infrastructure as code configuration, again, like CDK Migrate, based off of existing resources. So, whereas the CDK Migrate allows you to grab CloudFormation stack or even things created outside into the CDK application, the infrastructure as code generator is just going to allow you to just create CloudFormation. And I believe it's actually working on creating Terraform as well. Number three, so you probably heard of Fargate, which is ECS and EKS's launch type. It's not a separate service. I don't care what you say, AWS. I know, it's funny. So bottom line is that Fargate is a launch type, similar to EC2 as a launch type for the Elastic Container Service and the Elastic Kubernetes Service. So what's happened is that number three in this month is that AWS has actually reduced the cost of the serverless version of ECS and EKS for Windows. They have also changed some of the billing. So when you first launched a Windows container, you got charged for 15 minutes. If you launched it for a second, you got charged for 15 minutes. Now when you launch it, you get charged for 5 minutes. And thereafter, instead of being per minute billing, they give you per second billing, just like they do with EC2. So this is important from a cost perspective, particularly if you're using Fargate for ECS or EKS with Windows. Okay. Number four, they've now added disruption controls or disruption kind of budget aspects to Carpenter on AWS. Now, Carpenter is very much like a cluster-based autoscaler for AWS. And it's an open framework, but pretty much just for AWS right now. So these disruption budgets are going to give you more granular control about how you manage your Carpenter's scale in and scale out capability. Number five, so if you're not familiar with CloudShell, CloudShell is basically the in-browser button. It's usually on the upper right-hand side, it says CloudShell, that allows you to create a management environment for AWS just right there in the browser. It basically gives you a machine, like a Linux box, that you can go and mess with. It already has AWS CLI installed. It already has Python installed. Well, guess what? Now they've added Docker to that. So now you can actually introduce that into your workflows without having to start a separate machine that maybe has Docker capabilities. You can just do it right in CloudShell. That's number five. Number six, CodeCatalyst, which is basically like a unified development workflow for AWS, now supports manual approval as one of its kind of rules that you can put inside of its workflow. So this manual approval process was kind of missing because, I mean, even Jenkins, which is like 20 years old at this point in time, has a manual approval process. For those who need that, CodeCatalyst now supports it. So this is significant because this is a CI/CD aspect for DevOps, and so we want to make sure that we include it. That's number six. Number seven. So this one is more of like, hey, just be aware that we're going to talk about this again. Number seven is that somewhere back in February, AWS sent out an invite to people who wanted to participate in a hackathon where you created a generative app using Bedrock, which is kind of their like hosting tool for generative AI frameworks. So like you can launch like Mistral or Claude 3 in Bedrock if you want to and train it and run your apps and have the model run and all the other stuff. So it's kind of cool. Now what's happened is that they launched what they call a Party Rock AI hackathon where you get to team with other people and like basically make an app that can be submitted for judgment, evaluation, you win prizes, that kind of thing. We haven't really seen the results of this yet, but I just want to keep this in your mind a little bit because we're going to go follow this out in the next month and find out what the results were, because I'm very curious as to how this went down, because they probably will have another one, and if they do, I probably recommend that we take a look at it. Number 8, this is arguably the most important aspect of the entire month's worth of updates, is that we have included a QuickStart tutorial for including Amazon Q into your IDE. And you might say, Michael, why have you included this? Why do you keep including generative AI stuff in our AWS updates when this is supposed to be a DevOps focused thing? The idea here is that I want to make sure that you are career proofed, not just in AWS, but in your DevOps career in particular. And so when something like this happens, where generative AI starts to creep into our workflows and can be used, for example, in an IDE, I want you to have that knowledge and that information. I also want to make a prediction right now. You're going to hear it first here, right? Is that I suspect that Amazon, or AWS in particular, is going to fold most of their bets around generative AI into Amazon Q. I've been doing this for a minute, and it seems like they're really focusing on Amazon Q as the thing that they want people to brand around generative AI for AWS. And so I suspect that SageMaker, Bedrock, Code Whisperer, all of those tools are somehow going to end up integrated under Amazon Q. So you heard it here first. Stay connected with that. We'll see what happens. But this quick tutorial guide will let you get up and running with putting Q inside of your IDE. Okay? So that's it for this month. Hit subscribe, hit thumbs up, like this if you love it. If you want to hear some different topics, please put some comments in this video below. Otherwise, we will catch you here pretty soon for the March updates for Tidbits for AWS. Michael Forrester. I'll see you online.